Thank you, President Officer. Violent and disruptive behaviour in schools is getting worse. A small minority of pupils prevent the majority from learning in peace and in safety. Some teachers feel unsafe, many feel unsupported. The SNP's naive and weak approach fails absolutely everyone. And in response, they've just published this new guidance on behaviour in schools. And really, it's exactly what you might expect from this ineffective government. 49 pages of tedious, hand-wringing nonsense, complicated and confusing. And when John Swinney was Education Secretary, teachers said he issued too much guidance which made their jobs even harder. So why is he now repeating the same mistake?
First Minister.
President Officer, it's always my priority to listen to the teaching profession. I did that throughout my time as Education Secretary, and the guidance that Mr Finlay has cited has been a consequence of the work that's undertaken by ministers in consultation and dialogue with the teaching profession and other stakeholders in the world of education to make sure that it's effective and necessary to support our education system. The guidance is founded on an important point that Mr Finlay made in his question, that the disruption and disruptive behaviour in schools is the product of a minority of pupils. And the challenge, and what the guidance is focused on, is making sure that we have in place the necessary steps and measures to ensure that any disruptive behaviour is addressed so that the overwhelming majority of young people who behave perfectly well in schools and engage well in their schools are able to prosper in their education. Russell Finlay.
Well, if John Swinney had really listened to teachers, it does seem that he's then just gone on to completely ignore them. Because if you take a look at this report, what does it say should happen if a pupil commits an act of violence? Well, the report tells teachers to give violent pupils laminated bullet points, telling them to think about their behaviour. And it also suggests the way to tackle unsafe behaviour is, and I quote, a conversation to jointly problem solve with the child. And it also says that disruptive pupils should be allowed to leave class 2 minutes early, which to me sounds like a reward rather than a punishment. Now, the new guidance ends with 94 questions that teachers are supposed to ask themselves. 94 questions, as if they've got the time. So on behalf of Scotland's teachers, I've just got one question for John Swinney. Is this for real?
First Minister.
I don't think for a moment that Mr Finlay's presentation of the guidance is in any way, shape or form representative of what is actually there. And what the guidance is trying to do is to ensure that situations where there is violence in our schools are addressed, where problems are de-escalated, that they are resolved, because what we have to do is to make sure that every young person who engages with our education system is able to be well supported to fulfil their potential. Now, for some young people, that will be associated with disruptive behaviour, which has to be addressed. And that's precisely what the guidance assists the teaching profession to try to do, with the assistance of other resources that the government has put in place into our schools to address underlying causes of unacceptable behaviour by young people. So what the guidance is designed to do is to de-escalate situations in our schools to ensure that young people can participate in their education, because if young people are unable to participate in their education, they are unlikely to go on to good outcomes in our society, and we will simply repeat the difficulties that we've seen for many years of young people who do not go on to positive destinations. And of course this week we saw that we have another very high level of positive destinations being achieved by young people in Scotland.
Russell Finlay.
Well, I'm very confident of my interpretation of this document, and I'll let the teachers and pupils of Scotland decide what's in here. My party has long argued that a stricter approach is necessary to restore discipline in schools. We believe in exclusions for violence because they protect staff and pupils, and because they work. The new SNP guidance says exclusions should only be considered as a last resort. And when they are considered, teachers still need to follow guidance introduced by none other than John Swinney in 2017. That guidance has a 66-item checklist for teachers to consider when going through an exclusion process. So where does the SNP actually stand on this? Have they U-turned and now support exclusions to tackle bad behaviour, or do they not even know themselves?
First Minister.
President Officer, the guidance is crystal clear that exclusions are part of the approach that can be taken. But I'm making it clear today that exclusions can have negative consequences for young people. So Russell Finlay says that exclusions work. Well, if a young person is excluded from school, they are not in the safe environment of school. They are therefore likely to be out on the streets and therefore potentially able to become involved in some of the criminal activity that Mr Finlay himself has put to me within the last fortnight at First Minister's questions as being a risk to which young people are exposed. So I simply point out to Parliament the inherent contradiction in what has been put to me today. The contradiction between Mr Finlay one week saying we must make sure that young people are not exposed to criminal activity, and this week he's demanding we exclude more young people from schools and put them at risk of that criminal activity. Now, for the record, Presiding Officer, in 22-23, which is the most recent figure I have available, there were 11,676 exclusions recorded in Scottish education. Now, that is lower than it was in 2018-19, I accept, but it is still a very high level of exclusion of young people from our schools. And we have to consider what are the implications of not getting our approach to inclusion correct in our schools, because the damage to young people in our society can be long-term as a consequence.
Russell Finlay.
That was absolutely desperate. As the First Minister knows fine well, there are different types of exclusion rather than just putting children onto the streets, as he suggests. He virtually stopped exclusions, and that's causing discipline to collapse. He turned teachers into social workers. He sent a dangerous message to disruptive pupils that they can get away with it. He fundamentally changed the classroom culture, and that is now harming children and their education. People in the real world know how to sort this out. We need a tougher approach, not laminated cards and inclusive chats. If pupils are violent or serially disruptive, exclude them. Will John Swinney end the barrage of guidance and please empower teachers to take a stricter approach?